So we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Alex here. Alex, you're somebody that has been really innovative in bringing, legacy or traditional media, they call it now, into the modern age, and really ensuring that it's relevant and growing much more. You've done this with CNN. You helped really getting a large global and digital presence, and now you're doing this with MotorTrend, being the CEO of the MotorTrend Group, and really helping to create shows. I know you guys recently just did a deal with Max, so your shows are there. Growing out, strong YouTube channel, strong audience, and reaching, I think, over 100 million people today. A lot of this because of what you've been doing in the digital side of things. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Thanks for thinking of me, and I love your perspective on business and leadership. So this will be fun.
Awesome. So what are your passion, Alex, for, business leadership and wanting to be somebody that is in the media space and journalism begin? Like, how did this kind of start? Did you always have this when you were young? How did this passion start to develop?
It didn't occur to me to get into journalism or business for that matter. I think we all find our different way there. I was an engineer who went to law school, who liked to invent things like ping pong paddles and umbrellas and watches and tools to spot cars and all kinds of other things. And I was a writer. So I've always been a storyteller. I write fiction and nonfiction. So I kind of found my way to journalism and found my way subsequently to business. After going to law school and to engineering school, I had this opportunity to pitch a show, an investigative journalism show. So I left the law after only doing it for a couple of years, and I pitched a show to a network called Ziff Davis Television, ZDTV, all about high-tech crime. And that ultimately led to all kinds of different things. I became not only interested in the storytelling, but how we tell stories, the product side of things. It wasn't even called the chief product officer at the time, but eventually I was able to kind of turn that storytelling into a digital mechanism for delivering stories. And so I found my way to CNN and subsequently to MotorTrend. So kind of that whole notion of modernizing a brand, I'm attracted to brands that are iconic. Both of them are red with MotorTrend and CNN, but I like iconic brands that everyone's rooting for and that we can bend and stretch and make more modern for people. So it's an indispensable part of their lives.
So, you started out, I think, early on being an investigative writer, and you put a lot of that was like a big focus of yours. Why focus on being an investigative writer, and like what were some of the processes that you learned there that have helped kind of set you up for how you analyze things today? Because you have to look through a lot of interesting content, figure out how to figure out certain things that are a little unconventional.
At the heart of any story is a level of authenticity. I think there are characters and arcs and credibility and stakes. And all that's really valuable later in business and in telling stories through different mechanisms. So I think I was attracted to investigative journalism because I wanted to get to the heart of the matter. I knew that people had stories to tell. I knew some of these stories were very difficult to explain. So I like the idea of demystifying things. And it's important to be patient and listen and try to extract what the real message is. And so that ends up being very helpful because if you do it in fiction or if you do it in nonfiction, if you do it in business, right, you'll have success if you can connect with someone and they can trust you and you can be trusted with telling their story. So I think that's what ultimately led me down the investigative journalism track. And then I got to meet some incredible people. When I was doing cybercrime, I met hackers and heads of the Secret Service and the FBI. And these were people whose stories had not really been told. And we were able to kind of break into something that now is very relevant.
So, what did it take, Alex, to really transform CNN and make it much more focused on digital? I mean, initially there was a lot of a perspective especially when the internet was getting much bigger, that there was some reticence, especially from media companies. How did you kind of get in and work with management and really streamline a digital presence?
I think they always wanted it, and we knew that linear TV had its challenges, and that wasn't the way that people were going to ultimately embrace and keep up with the news. I think that we had to break a lot of the rules that were associated with news appearing first on TV, right? We didn't want to break news on digital initially because it would hurt ratings. And I think some of those rules need to be thrown out as you look at just trying to get the best information, the most correct information to people as quickly as possible. So I think once we started really combining both the TV or linear folks with the digital, that made a very big difference for the news gathering side of things too. But then we had to explore all kinds of ways in emerging technology, whether it was through Alexa. We built an app that enabled you to ask Alexa anything, and it would look back at all of our broadcasts and capture by tagging the content, the story that was most relevant in the last 30
Hmm.
seconds. Or we would actually break the rules, Ben, and we would publish what they call as a rundown. So we would publish for the next 2 hours coming up every single story that we're going to cover. Sometimes you would throw it out because it'd be breaking news, but we would tell people what we're doing next. And then we would annotate those stories that were in live video with photography, written word, audio, and all kinds of things. So I think some of the things we got right, some of the things we got wrong, but it wasn't for lack of desire by the CNN staff. I think it was just a question of how to get from here to there, and I think they're still doing that really well.
Mhm. And were you able to be like pretty nimble and try things quickly? Was that type of environment there?
It all comes down to your manager and the people above you and how much permission they give you. And I had amazing, incredible managers and great leaders and visionaries who didn't just say things like, fail fast or try harder or, make mistakes. Like they actually let you make the mistakes. They actually gave you the autonomy to do that. And yeah, I think that made a really big difference. And we tried different things and didn't get punished if we made a mistake. And sometimes you have to do some really basic things really well. At one point we had, I think, 2.3 million concurrent uh, watchers on our streaming platforms during an election. Watching live video was very common at that point. This was going back maybe 5 or 6 years, or now 10 years. But having that many users have a flawless experience where no frame is being dropped, where they can actually have the audio and video in sync, like it's hard to do that from millions of people at the same time too. So some of it is, yes, you have to break through, do things that no one's ever done, and other things you have to do really well, but at scale.
Hmm. So it seemed like you were having a good time. You were able to really to operate and be innovative at CNN. Why did you decide you wanted to move to something different? Like, how did this next opportunity come about?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I had been there for over 10 years. I gotten to do so much. The thing about CNN that was wonderful, Ben, was that I was a journalist, right? And I was able to move from journalism to digital to product to business to strategy. So I got to do about 6 or 7 different roles. And I got a chance while I was there to leave and go back to business school. So I had already gone to law school and engineering school, but I went back to business school. And I was and there I got the bug. I really wanted to be more than the L in the P&L, right? I wanted to be a profit center, not just a cost center. And so understanding the financials and digging in and looking long term was one thing that excited me. And two was that I was interested in learning more about a direct to consumer relationship because that was clearly where everything was going. So, what did it mean to have the lifetime value, to look at churn, to look at cost per acquisition, all these important metrics that were coming 6, 7 years ago? I wanted to lean into it. And what better place to do that than in cars? I mean, cars were so fun. I had a lot of connections to cars, and everyone has a car story, right?
Mhm.
So I thought, all right, this is an area where instead of going wide with CNN and news, I could go deep with fans. And I think I'll probably do that for the rest of my career. I think I'll probably spend most of my career going deep and trying to create value for people, um, and bring some joy to them about the things that matter most to them.
Mhm. That sounds good. So, Alex, how did the opportunity for MotorTrend, being involved in MotorTrend Group, come about? Was it like through a friend? Was someone kind of recruiting you? How did that opportunity happen?
I think it's two different things. So one is I was in my career. I came out of the business program at Harvard, and I wanted to talk about how to get from here to there. And they had pointed out to me that it even though my career had emerged, I hadn't been deliberate about it, but had emerged, it probably had gone as far as I could go. No one was going to tap me on the shoulder and say you were going to be the CEO. I needed to really be purposeful and think about what were the skills that I was missing, do that gap analysis, acquire those skills so that I could be in consideration. That's what I would say to anyone listening here, right? There's no guarantees you're going to get that thing you want, but you want to be in the consideration set. So I figured out what skills I needed to acquire. And as I kind of picked up those skills, I also needed to find a champion, someone who would take a chance on me, because most people are going to, as you know, pick the thing they know that has a consistent record. So then the question becomes, well, how the heck does anyone become anything if they're looking for somebody who has a track record? And so I did the analysis. I tried to acquire the skills. I found the champions. I kind of positioned myself in the marketplace. I made a very difficult decision to leave CNN, even though I had a great job and it was an amazing brand. And I picked my head up and I started talking to people for 6 to 8 months. And with these new skills and where I was in my career, there were things that were presented to me that sounded exciting. And there were a number of different things that looked interesting and exciting. And ultimately, it was at Discovery, which became Warner Brothers, which is where I left from CNN. So it's very confusing. But if you map it all out, I moved from Warner Brothers back to Warner Brothers with MotorTrend because that's who owns us. But I will tell you that, they were looking at CEOs, or at the time a president of a media company, for people who had, in particular, a product background, a technology background. So yes, business was critical and you had to have that dimension, but you needed to know how to create products that people absolutely loved, that became part of their lives, that were intuitive, that were pixel perfect, that were fun. And I knew how to do that. I had 24 patents just on my own personal time. So I really knew about building things, and I had gotten to do it at CNN, luckily, with an amazing team. So when I had, on the one side, kind of acquired the skills and positioned myself, and then on the other side, made myself available and met a champion and someone who took a chance on me, I found an opportunity, and I was willing to move out to California with my family, and they were in agreement. All things kind of hit on all six cylinders, and you can't get through a conversation without a car analogy from the MotorTrend CEO. But we looked under the hood. There's where the rubber meets the road, whatever you want to call it. But we really accelerated forward, and it's turned out to be, without a doubt, the most extraordinary 6 years of my career.
So you just kind of thought, like, if I position myself, I already have background. If I position myself to get the right kind of skill sets of other people in this type of a position that I want to be in, and I'm kind of in this area, I put myself in the best place to make something like this happen. So it's
That's right. What is it going to take to ensure that you're in the consideration set? Why on earth would they tap you on the shoulder, particularly if you haven't done that thing already and you don't have a long history with that company? I think that's what it is. It's really important to think through, kind of, or visualizing, kind of what you want and how it would look, and making it easier for them to put you in that role, and then finding a champion. I think we all know that. Anyone listening here can think about one or two people in their lives that were made such a big difference, right? And you need that.
How difficult was it to transition from, like, magazines and other types of media, and really go and have this new, strategy to grow out social media to be a lot more digital focused and produce your own content? Like, what did it take for you to get in and really change that here too?
For anyone who's listening right now, they may be thinking about MotorTrend as Car of the Year, or they may think of us as having a magazine, but we're not anything like that anymore. Yes, we have an incredible magazine, and yes, we do Car of the Year, but we have a fully distributed TV network in 70 million homes. We have a direct-to-consumer business now, part of Max and Discovery Plus. We do events all around the world, dozens of them. We have 70 million plus, 80 million plus people on social. We do branded content. We're a universe of kind of automotive. We help people buy cars, right? That's it's soup to nuts, from finding the cars to doing the research to making the tools. So yes, the last 6 years has been transformative, right? Most people thought of MotorTrend as a magazine, and we don't run from that, but we are so much more as for people, and we want to be an indispensable part of people's lives. So with that said, yes, I think there are a number of things that I would attribute to our success. I think first and foremost is hiring remarkable people who are diverse. And when I say diverse, I mean just experiences and love for cars that look like the audience that you want to have, right? And so how do you think about, not only the fans, going deep with them and having that credibility? I think of like Nike and the athletes, but then going wide and being really generous and saying, okay, cars are like celebrities, right? We see a Lamborghini or McLaren on the road, or Ferrari, and you've seen everyone from a 40-year-old to a 4-year-old kind of point to it like it's like a sighting of a Sasquatch or something like that. Like it's the most amazing thing, or a Brad Pitt or someone. So I think being able to channel that passion and understand that everyone has a car story was important. So what does that mean? That means that you have to go to the platforms and meet them where they are. And really, like if you want to make something special on your platform, dynamite, make something that's so unique that no one can replicate. But otherwise, your choice is to not have the audience or go where they are. And so by leading on YouTube, by leading on Fast, which is free ad supported networks, and making our content available on all these third-party platforms, that was the only way through to distribute the stories we wanted to tell, and ultimately how we wanted to tell them. So I think for people who are interested in cars in any version, if you want to buy a car, we're going to be the best place to do that at MotorTrend.com. If you want to watch our content on Max or Discovery Plus, we have 7,000 hours of shows about restorations and drag racing and Top Gear and Roadkill and all these great shows. So I think it is a combination of both the what people call as your owned and operated, the platforms that you control, but then being very, very generous on the third party platforms, because that's ultimately where a lot of people will consume you.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, Alex, you just mentioned a lot of different points that people can go and look at content stuff that you create. I mean, you guys are reviewing like every car that comes out. You have your own best car ranking. So you're aware of what's in the industry. What do you want to see most from automakers that you haven't been able to see currently? Like, what are some things that you think are missing for customers that that you would like to see these car makers add into their next vehicles?
I think everyone knows who's listening that inevitably they're going to be in a hybrid or an EV car at some point. They can still collect and be involved with internal combustion engines, and they're amazing and they'll be around forever. But I think it's a confusing time, whether you have range anxiety or the costs are not right there, or charging issues and some of the things that come with it. But for me, that's my car story. I remember 7 years ago driving an EV, Ben, and it was a transformative event. I have not gone back. We are all EV house. We love to drive them. I'm often in an internal combustion engine car, but it was a transformative experience to be in an EV. And so what I want from the automakers is for them to continue to really evolve the not only the designs, because when you remove the engine, you can actually do some pretty fabulous designs, but also the cockpit, like the whole experience inside the car is going to change, whether it's autonomous or whether it's something that you're driving. That's really where you're going to see a lot of changes. And so that's what I want from the OEMs or the manufacturers. But from us, the world needs MotorTrend now more than ever, right? I mean, I think you need a trusted voice. It's 75 years this year that we've been around. Like, you can't talk about a lot of brands that are around 75 years. So what does the next 75 years look like? We should be the ones to help you figure this out, right? To be generous and say, okay, what are the tools you need? What are the reviews? Well, let's talk about it in a way that's accessible, but that the pros respect, and really help you through this really financially difficult decision and put you in the car that matters the most to you. And so I think it is like any relationship. The OEMs or the car manufacturers have to create these irresistible experiences and deal with the fact that some people will love their internal combustion engine forever. But then we have to help walk through the experience and say, okay, here's how you compare these two cars. Here's the pros and cons. I think that's our job to be done for the community and for the world at large.
Do you think that AI is going to be, really helpful in doing that job and showing the pros and cons and giving more details as you go forward? Like, how do you view that balance between what you guys, the reporters that you have and what you're doing, and how AI can help that?
There's no way through without AI. I mean, the answer can't be that AI writes your articles. I mean, we need butts in seats. We need people driving these cars and reviewing them long term and experiencing them so we can share those experiences with you. So I don't want AI to just write the article for us. That's not going to be what happens. But we're already using machine learning and AI today, right? It helps us think about pricing and giving depreciation in the particular zip code you're in. We use AI for image recognition. I have a patent that I signed to MotorTrend that is image recognition. So you hold it up, you can do it right now if you downloaded car spotting on your iOS device, and you hold it up to a car and it tells you what car you're looking at. Not all of us know what we're looking at when we see a car, and then you can probably buy that car or fan that car and watch it. And we use AI machine learning for our kind of homegrown recommendations. So we already are using machine learning and AI. I think though the way through has to be with leveraging that to do so much more. What I want us to do is to create a corpus or kind of a universe of content that nobody can replicate. And then of course, taking that information and then massaging it or kind of restructuring it in a way so that people get it in a much more personal way. I believe in a personal, not personalized experience. Like it should feel personal. It should feel like our product should get you. Those are the products I want to build. Things where they're like, oh my God, like MotorTrend gets me, like CNN gets me. Like I always said that as well, and any other brand that we're involved with.
How impactful has your joint venture with Discovery been? I mean, Discovery has a lot of resources, that could help you in terms of probably, market analysis, or just there's a lot of different ways, business operations. Like how has the joint venture with Discovery been most helpful?
So now we're fully owned by Warner Brothers. So we're a fully owned subsidiary of Warner Brothers Discovery, and it's fabulous. I mean, when you have a company that has that kind of global reach, that has the most famous IP on the planet. Cars are, by the way, like in every single scripted and unscripted piece of content that's out there, and they have Batman and the Batmobile, and they also have incredible IP like our shows, from Roadkill and Top Gear and Kevin Hart's Muscle Car Crew to Hot Rod Garage and a number of others. So I think being part of the largest library of content who's generating new content, reaching people, in our case, they reach 250 million people every single month across streaming and TV. And those people index high on consideration and purchasing. These are the people buying cars, right? They're talking to them all the time. So we could probably get to just about anyone by being part of Warner Brothers Discovery. We just have to make sure that we have really important information to share and stories to share. So I think it's been the only way to supercharge the business to be part of this bigger company.
Interesting. So they've got just such a great audience that you can understand, maybe even target to.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there are moments in a company where you'll need something really special to accelerate the business, to grow the business. And I would definitely say that it was Warner Brothers Discovery, and we were a joint venture, so we had that benefit as well too, that enabled us to become even that much more relevant and grow that much more quickly. And going back to what we talked about, even at CNN, and certainly within Warner Brothers Discovery, they've given us tons of autonomy and encouraged us to take tons of initiative and try things. And some have worked, and we could talk about that on another podcast, and some haven't. But for the most part, we've seen immense growth. I mean, you look at linear TV, there have been declines in TV watching. I don't know how many people listening right now are watching live TV beyond sports and news. But any declines that we've seen in linear, which have been nominal, have been 3 to 4x growth, or higher on our digital platforms. But if we had not moved to YouTube, if we had not moved to direct to consumer, if we had not been on third-party platforms, if we had not taken those steps, then it would have been a declining business. But instead, it's a growing business because we were willing to do both.
Interesting. It's definitely good you did that. I mean, certain brands have just went away and they've been bought out by other companies or they're non-existent. I mean, Life magazine is now being brought back, but brands make decisions, and you guys made a decision that's really pushed into the digital age, and now it's around and growing, which is great to see.
Thank you. I will tell you, it is all about the people. I'm not saying that because it's the right thing to say, it's the truth. And assembling the right team, creating a culture, having one another's backs, us against the world, focusing on execution, they're really hard things to do. And sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't. But if anything, we want to be as transparent with our staff because we need them so deeply. And so it really is about building that team. There's this book, Good to Great, which many of your listeners may be aware of. You've probably read it too. But he talks about getting people on the bus and how strategy and even the type of business that you're in is only secondary to actually having the right people on the bus. And if you have the right people on the bus, you almost could do anything. You could do almost any business. And I think that way about my team, or the team I'm a part of. I feel like, if we wanted to get into just about any category, I feel like this would be a winning team. But it so happens that we get to be in cars, which are very cool. But I think that's really important, is to have that right team.
Definitely agree. So just the last question that I have, Alex, you're involved now in your son's business, which the Duo umbrella, which won, a six-figure investment on Shark Tank. You're the chair there. What do you want to accomplish at this point in your career? I mean, you've done a bunch of your own patents. You're involved in that. Is your goal kind of to run MotorTrend, to be involved, like you mentioned earlier, in other, really focused media? What are some things that you haven't accomplished that you want to be able to accomplish currently?
I wish I had a better answer for you. I will tell you that, I mean, for the Duo and the umbrella that my son had on Shark Tank, that's been a really eye-opening experience, and it's a way for my son and I to connect even more deeply, and I'm learning all the time, and that's more of a side hustle on the weekends or nights to help him. But I've been learning a ton about umbrellas. They're very complicated, by the way. But if you have, everyone knows, when you have a good umbrella or a bad umbrella, it makes your life very different in the middle of the rain. So this one was great because it helped two people share an umbrella. I think MotorTrend I love. I would do MotorTrend for the rest of my career as long as we could continue to grow and do the things that we love to do, which is help people celebrate cars and help hopefully buy the right car. But there was this great reference I'll leave you with. It's not mine. It's Benjamin Zander, who is the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. And I was pointed to it just a couple of days ago about shining eyes. I think that's what it is for me. It's like, can I create these shining eyes? Not that they look at me as a great leader necessarily, or they love me. That's always nice feeling that people have. But really, like, can you excite people? Can you have them come into work every day and be like, I'm so excited. I can't believe it. Like, we're winning. What are the short-term wins and the long-term wins? What is the vision? Like, that's the thing that brings me the most joy, the way I'm built, is like, how do I get people excited about almost anything, but to get after it, to point to that hill and take that hill? I think as long as my career involves doing things like that, and I'm an operator, so I need to be an operator. So I need to be in a business where we're doing something. I can't be a consultant, or look at strategy all the time. I really want to be in the operating role and executing. But as long as I'm doing that, we see some shining eyes in the people out there who are our staff. I think whether it's umbrellas or cars with umbrellas or something else, I think I'll be really happy and lucky.
That's a good way to look at it. It's just about the people, being around the right people, and doing something that's innovative and inspiring. So I appreciate you coming on, Alex, and sharing your story. I think there's definitely a lot people can learn about how you went from investigative journalist and kind of, took different opportunities and was innovative with the digital age. And even now, what's the most important aspects about what you're doing at MotorTrend and how you've, managed it and brought it into a different place currently. So thanks for sharing that, and I hope people learn something. Appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks, Ben. And I will say that one of the biggest lessons I've learned is the answer is not as important as the question. You're awesome about asking the right questions. So it's very cool to be on the program.
Thanks.